Welcome to Salute to the Ears. On this episode, we break down our recent trip to Disneyland, where we will talk about some of our do's and don'ts that we learned along the way, some of the things we liked and didn't like so much, and maybe a little comparison of Walt Disney World and Disneyland along the way, too. This is episode 69 of Salute to the Ears. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Salute to the Ears. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Erica.
And today we're gonna go over some of our do's and don'ts from our recent trip to Disneyland.
Yeah, so we did both Disneyland and Disney's California Adventure very recently with a lot of family. We had a party of 16.
Yeah, very big group.
Very large group, ages 3 to 67. We had a ton of fun, but we had a lot to do and a lot to get in 3 days.
Kids that wanted to kind of go in every different direction. We had some that liked to do some of the thrill stuff, and we had some that couldn't do the thrill stuff.
Yeah.
And you can only do so many thrill rides in a row or big kid rides in a row before the littles start getting restless.
Yeah, and even if you have big kids, there's still a lot of things that they, want to do and experience. I don't know. There is a lot to do in Disneyland. So we've got both parks that we're going to go over in 2 different episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to talk about our experiences because that's all we can really draw on is what our actual experience was with this. But at the same time, we learned some stuff that we want to pass on to you guys.
Right. And there's some stuff that we didn't do well. Yeah. That I think if we ever went back, especially if we were able to go back and say meet a group of friends or something there that knows how to do Disneyland, Disneyland is their park. We would definitely learn some things and be like, oh, why do we do it like that?
Oh, yeah. We did not do this perfectly, by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
So, hear us when we say that, what we're trying to give you as far as, quote-unquote advice is drawn from our experience, drawn from what we saw, and drawn from some of what we regret.
Right. Absolutely. I think one of the first things you got to do is not go into it. And if you do Disney World or have done Disney World a lot, don't go into Disneyland trying to do it like Disney World.
It's a very different experience.
It's very different. One, we usually try and rope drop at Disney World, and there is some benefit to it, but that benefit goes away really quick. Mm-hmm. I think at Disneyland, it sticks around a little bit longer. Even with us dealing with some large crowds, we still had a good hour and a half, 2 hours of
real minimal crowds.
Yeah, being able to basically just kind of walk on whatever we wanted to do.
Now, the weather helped us that day too.
It did a little bit.
That does make a difference, I think, as far as it was a Friday.
Right.
You had a lot of people who still were working because it was the end of Memorial Day week. So you had people who had already had Monday off and might still be at work. So, I think we did have an advantage of being there on a Friday, but
I think the weather played some into it, but even watching the crowds whenever we were over at DCA the next day, the crowds remained low for a good 2 hours at both parks, really. But watching both, now, they stayed pretty low.
We went, when we entered the park, we had a plan because we had heard this from some other vloggers and
thank you, Kari.
And some other people on Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that of, hey, if you have littles and you're wanting to meet Mickey Mouse, this is the perfect time.
Right.
And so we went to Toontown first. So we did the thing. Normally everybody goes right. That's you're naturally inclined. The crowd tends to go to the right whenever there's a split. And so it's always go left, right? Mm-hmm. Look left, because there's almost always, I can't count the number of times we'd see a open ticket stall or like a open security lane or anything if you just looked left. And they, so everybody at Disneyland though goes left to go to Rise.
Right. It's going back to Galaxy's Edge seemed to be where everybody was taking off like right away.
So pretty much everything else was open. We rope dropped Toontown and it was magical.
Right.
It was almost completely empty. There were a handful of other families back there with us. I mean, but it was minimal. And we got to meet Mickey instead of walking through the house and having to wait 30 minutes, we waited, 5 minutes?
If that, yeah.
And met Mickey on his porch in his casual outfit. It's more of his, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse type. It's just a more, low-key outfit. Right. And you meet him on his porch. And it was so perfect.
Absolutely.
We have this incredibly cemented core memory of our nieces and nephews getting to hug him and see him for the very first time in their lives. And there was no, it was just, they got to just experience it and hang out and see him and then see Goofy. And,
yep. Because as soon as they were done, Goofy was just wandering around in there.
Oh yeah. He was just hanging out, watching, waiting for people to come say hi. They rode the Chippendales.
Yeah, like the Gadget coaster.
Yeah. And then we walked on to Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway.
Right. I didn't get to spend enough time in the queue. I'm having to try and take pictures as I'm going through that thing because we're having to go through so fast.
Yeah. I mean, it was 100% a walk-on and totally worth, being back there first thing.
Absolutely.
Now, for our party, here is where that balance comes in, right? Of, the other big thing our party wanted to do was Rise.
Uh-huh.
We should have just...
Went straight back there?
We either...
From Toontown.
From Toontown. I think we should have started there instead of trying to go back and do other stuff in... Tomorrowland and, getting out some of the other things that are closer to Toontown.
Maybe.
But I think it's one of those things. So the rest of our party did not get to do Rise.
That's correct. It's what we should have done, and we didn't because we figured this out the other days by watching it in the afternoon. The wait times went down in the afternoon. The problem being some of the people who wanted to ride it left the parks in the afternoon, so that still may not have worked.
Right.
But right after we got done doing Toontown, we saw that everything else, we started doing either Genie Plus or just walking on stuff because there was no wait for anything.
Yeah. So I mean, and the hard thing is that you can only do that individual lightning lane for Rise.
Uh-huh.
And so even if you have Genie Plus, you're going to have to pay for another lightning lane if you want to do Rise as a lightning lane instead of waiting in line. So by the time we got done with Toontown, Rise was already a 45-minute wait or something.
Right.
At that point.
I think it was up to an hour.
It may have already been an hour at that point. And so you're kind of especially if you have a range of ages that are trying to do things, you are going to have to kind of choose.
Yeah.
And here's what I say. We did go to Toontown again later. If you want Toontown to be quieter when you are back there and not chaos,
go
do it
first.
in the morning.
Yeah. When we went back there and it was in the afternoon, it was insane.
I mean, it just felt like...
It felt like a different place.
Yeah. I mean, it really did. It did not have the same feel to it. So here's the thing. Galaxy's Edge, other than a lightsaber meetup or something like that, where they pack in to a space in Galaxy's Edge, is almost always just pretty, flows really well through Galaxy's Edge. So you're not having that kind of overtaking chaos within there that you do end up getting in Toontown later. So biggest recommendation is if you have littles who want to meet Mickey, who want to try to see other characters, and if you want to ride Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, rope drop Toontown if you can.
Yeah.
And
Because part of that is also the Toontown part with Mickey and Minnie and going in their house. That part closes early.
yes.
Though Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway and Roger Rabbit stay open till park close, but the rest of it closes down.
Right.
So you have to weigh that as well.
And some of that closes because of fireworks as well.
Right.
So during the fireworks show. So you got to understand that as well. Whereas Rise is open throughout fireworks. Something else to mention with that. I don't just want to go just through like chronologically through our day because there was a lot.
There was a lot. We would be.
The other thing when we're talking about Rise is Rise closes earlier than the park. So if the park's open until midnight, Rise is closing at 10.
Right. We figured that out the hard way.
We figured that out the hard way. We had no idea. And it wasn't that far past 10. It wasn't like it was like 11:45. But whereas every ride at Disney World is you can get on it 1 minute before the park closes. And
as long as you're in the queue, you're getting in. Yep.
That is not the same case at Disneyland. So some rides, yes.
Right.
Not all of them, but particularly not Rise. I don't understand it. I don't know why. If you do and you want to send us a message, please do, because I would love to understand that more. But so if you have people who are wanting to ride Rise, which I personally think is so great at night.
It is. Galaxy's Edge at night.
Galaxy's Edge at night is, I love it way more at night than I do during the day. I mean, it's fun during the day too, but like...
Right. Just something about seeing the Millennium Falcon lit up.
Oh, yeah. I feel like you see some more of those details that you don't really notice during the day. But just be aware of that so that if you're planning to ride Rise, it is not one that you can go get on, at the very end of the night.
Right.
So if the park closes at 10... I don't know what the situation is there. So we only dealt with the park closing at midnight every night. So I don't know. I don't know why. And we didn't ask at that point. It was the end of the night. And we were all kind of tired and frustrated and ready to crash.
Because we'd just gotten done with fireworks, and then we kind of beelined back to Galaxy's Edge, and we're like, oh well, there's a pretty significant wait at that point for Rise. And by the time other people got done doing Smuggler's Run, then you couldn't even get on it. So...
I don't even think we could get on it. That's why they went and did Smuggler's Run, because we couldn't even get on it.
Oh. Well, I knew that there was a long wait time at that point, so they were waiting to see if it could drop. I think was the original plan. But so if you want to ride it, don't wait until last thing at night.
Yeah. Make a plan for that, whether that is an individual lightning lane or not. Our other big takeaway from the day is use Genie Plus. It works beautifully.
Yeah, I feel like Disneyland and DCA, Genie Plus works like it's supposed to. Not necessarily like using it for your tip board and having it plan out your day, but being able to schedule your lightning
that didn't
lanes.
help us.
No, like... We're lucky, like, we know enough of, like, hey, we want to do this and this and this. Like, and we're able to, we know what the rides are, so we're able to pick and choose what we want to do.
Well, and kind of make a plan as far as, like, hey, these kids are going to be able to ride it, these kids aren't. What are we going to do in that,
right.
Okay, if you guys are riding Space Mountain, what am I doing with littles? Like, who aren't riding that? It was one thing that kids were disappointed that I did not ride Space Mountain, which right now is Hyperspace Mountain.
Which was fantastic. Like, I knew it was a Star Wars overlay, but one, their Space Mountain, Disneyland Space Mountain is way...
Is it the superior one?
It is the superior one. It's just smoother. It's nice riding like side by side. Yeah, I didn't feel like I had to like completely like brace myself the whole time coming through it because I'm afraid of whiplash or whatever else. Like,
well, especially on day one, very beginning of the morning. I did not ride it. I stayed out with littles when you guys rode it the first time.
Right.
And
But the way they matched up the overlay, like you have the sound in your ear, which is really clean, and you got TIE fighters you're like dodging away from, and lasers going. Like it was fantastic. Like it took me by complete surprise.
Yeah, I do as one of my like, as we go through and kind of list some of the things we regret. That is one of mine, is that I didn't go back and do it. Mm-hmm. But there really wasn't a great time for us to go and do that, where I felt like I wasn't going to maybe be motion sick.
Yeah.
Like we were doing other thrill rides and stuff, and so it was kind of like having to choose between, you know, which side of the park we wanted to be on. But we used the heck out of Genie Plus.
We did.
And the one thing I noticed is we had a lot, there were a couple of rides where you had, okay, now it's not, especially in DCA, where you had like, okay, well, it's 2 hours from now or 3 hours from now. But you didn't have the lightning lanes selling out by 11 a.m. like you do at Disney World.
Oh, no. No.
You know, it would be like, hey, you've got to wait 25 minutes and then go use your lightning lane. And essentially all you're doing is waiting out that standby line, but not in the line.
Right.
Is the best way that I can describe it.
Or for a lot of time for us, it was we would choose whatever lightning lane, and it may have been the time that it took us to walk to get there. And then it's like, oh, look, it's ready. Here we go.
Yeah. And the nice thing, too, with it is where at Disney World, you have several rides that have the dual touch points. They have 2 touch points that you have to go through in Lightning Lane, not just one. We would be waiting in the line for Lightning Lane and booking our next one because
They only had the one.
They only had the 1 touch point when you check in.
Yeah.
And it is a little different because Magic Bands are new there.
Right. But that's the one place Magic Bands were working well.
Oh, I mean, and they worked to get in, too.
They did.
That was a really smooth thing after the first time that we scanned in. Mm-hmm. We used our Magic Bands, and that was super easy. I hope that more people start using them there.
Right.
Because it does, like, I was the keeper of the tickets on my account. Mm-hmm. We didn't figure out until, like, 2 days in how to, like, link everybody's accounts and have everybody's info all together. That is, to me, a more complex thing than...
right, because it's not the same.
Well, and because, like, we had some of the other teenagers with us one day, and linking their tickets to ours, I now can see their tickets. Versus just being able to add them as part of our plans. I have, like, access to their entry ticket and all of that. And so it was a little weird in that of, like, so if you're just there with friends and you link so that just one person is doing the lightning lanes, you're kind of, I don't know. It was just it
was different.
It was different. But so a lot of times what would happen is you have one parent who has everybody's stuff on their phone.
Right.
And so you have 2 ways of scanning in for lightning lanes there. You have the Magic Band, like we were used to, and you hold it up and it dings, right? Or they have a scanner at the base of that same tower that has the Magic Band scanner on it, and it's a little, like, you know, bar scanner, like the red light bar scanner, and you slide your phone underneath there, or your paper ticket, if you have a paper ticket, and you use that and you scan that barcode. So you would have a parent who has all of the tickets on their phone and would have to go, okay, here's 1,
scroll
through.
Yeah.
Here's 2, and go through.
And
here's
sometimes,
3.
at least on my phone, things don't always move over real well for some reason on that app. Whenever I go to scroll over.
We were having some problems with the app crashing sometimes.
Yeah. So, like, I will always say, hey, get a Magic Band.
Yeah. But Lightning Lane worked really, really well, and we never, whereas, like, sometimes at Disney World, we'll look at Lightning Lane and be like, well, this was kind of pointless because the Lightning Lane is almost as long as the standby line. Yeah. And so then you feel like you wasted a Lightning Lane. Right. But the aspect of, like, we never waited long.
No, the strategy you have to use for Genie Plus in Disney World is you really have to think through stuff and start stacking. And doing all of that
You
in
have
order
to be thinking about what you want to do later in the day,
Right.
not just what do you want to do next.
right there. It's just like, okay, what do I want to do next? And you can click on it and it works. Like, so that's definitely
The only time we kind of had an issue with that was just because of our larger party and trying to book everybody or get everybody, what are you doing? What are we doing?
Right.
Where are we going? But yeah, I mean, if it was just us and the kids, man. Now, they do have the same thing that Disney World does. Right? Disney World also has this where you cannot, once you've booked that lightning lane for that ride,
you can't book it again.
You can't book it again. And part of me gets it, and part of me is like, that kind of sucks.
I get it, because there would be some rides where people would just do it over and over.
I just wish that there was like okay, you can't do it for 3 hours, or you can't do it for 4 hours or something. Like,
right.
Like, you can't do it back to back, but like you have a 4-hour window or something.
Or you have an AM and a PM.
Right. Like, I feel like there needs to be a little bit more there, because we did run into where we went through all of the lightning lanes.
Right.
For Disneyland.
Yeah.
That other than the individual lightning lane for.
Right.
Like.
Because we tried to go back. The kids, like, they saw a short one for Hyperspace Mountain. And you were the only one who was going to be able to do it because you were the only one who hadn't used it.
Yep.
So, sometimes that comes back to bite you.
Yeah. So, it was one of those things where, like, you guys could have just waited for Hype. That was a short line that morning, too. Like, and I think we used the lightning lane on it that morning. Yeah. And then, like, you guys could have waited.
Yeah, it was like a 20-minute wait.
Yeah. It is definitely was worth it, though, to have and use, because we definitely were able to get through a lot more rides.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than if we had just been standing in line.
Right. Yep.
I would just include it as part of your budget.
Yeah.
Sorry, just include it as part of what your ticket cost is, and just consider it part of your budget from the get-go. And then my thought process is, if you don't purchase it ahead of time, because I think that's going away, right? Is that not at Disneyland? Just
I'm
at
not
Disney
for sure.
World?
I'm not for sure.
That's been so confusing. There's been so many announcements back and forth on that. But if it's not part of your ticket package already, which was very easy for us to utilize, it's, if you end up not using it and you budgeted for it and you end up being like, hey, you know what? Crowds are really low today, so we're not going to use it. And you end up not using it. Well, great. You saved yourself, $25 a person. But take the savings versus having to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we're having to spend another, think of it the opposite way.
Yep. Especially if your time is limited.
Yeah.
Like, I would highly recommend it. Because there's going to be other things during the day that you're going to have to wait for.
Yeah.
Like, if you're wanting to go to the parade, like, you're probably not, and you want a good spot, you're not going to just be able to show up 5 or 10 minutes before the parade.
Expect that to be a solid hour out of your day at minimum.
It's because it's not a short parade either, because they have built-in gaps so people can cross the street.
Yeah.
In designated areas, not just a free-for-all, like, cross and go. They have, like, different, like, crossing areas to go. But if you want a good spot to get pictures and videos, or you want your littles to really get a good view of the different characters and stuff that are coming by.
Or potentially have any interaction with characters. Yeah.
Like, it's going to be a good hour. We were there, half hour, 45 minutes before, at least?
Yeah, at least.
And, like,
we barely got snagged a, decent spot. I am glad of where we were, though, just because... So we were right in front of the entrance to the Plaza restaurant.
Right.
And on the Tomorrowland side of the hub area. And so the way that the floats come around the corner
from Fantasyland?
Yeah, so they come from Fantasyland, like, towards It's a Small World. Like, that area is where they... come through from, like, past Matterhorn. They basically come from, like, It's a Small World, there's like a backstage right there, and it comes through from there and then goes through by the Matterhorn, in between the Matterhorn and Fantasyland, and then up towards the hub. And then it curves around the hub a little bit, and then it goes down Main Street and out from there. And where we were at, they like curve around into the hub. And so we got some awesome photos.
Yeah.
Just because the way we were able to face some of the floats head on, at least for a moment. And so we got some really cool photos. And then it also meant that like we were on the side of the street that those characters tended to interact with first.
Uh-huh.
And so that was really, really neat.
Yeah.
And very helpful.
That was a fantastic parade.
It really was. It did, like, even though it was longer, there aren't as many floats.
No, but the floats
they're phenomenal.
They're phenomenal. Like, those are like some of the best floats I've ever seen them put out. It's much better than the mirror float or whatever that's been around forever down at.
Oh, come on, I like the mirror
I like
float.
the mirror float just because of like the history of it, but these things were phenomenal.
Moana's boat is incredible.
Coco's was phenomenal.
Coco's was awesome. Yeah.
Frozen was phenomenal.
But there definitely are not as many floats as what there are in the one at Disney World.
Yeah.
There aren't, like, we counted. There aren't. We were missing like 2 or 3. You're missing a bunch of the princesses.
Yeah.
You're missing, there were a couple other big ones that you were missing, like, you have a lot more characters that are just walking and don't have a float than what you do.
I don't necessarily mind, because I feel like that's when you get the better interactions
You do get some of the better interactions with it, but at the same time, you also end up with fewer kids that just get seen.
Yeah.
Because sometimes those characters end up kind of staying to one side.
Yeah, they do.
So whereas like if they're just on the float, they get more of an opportunity to at least wave and notice people on both sides. But yeah, it was good. Like I enjoyed it. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we saw it. I would not say it's my favorite out of the 2.
See, we disagreed on this. Like I like it like considerably more than the one at Disney World.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I love the pirate ship, and I love Rapunzel's float. Rapunzel was the one, she was a hard character, and she was like the character that Hattie wanted to meet. Yeah. And so that was a hard one for me, was that I felt like she was a missing character while we were there.
Right. Yeah, I see that. You didn't hardly see her. You didn't see like really even many references of her around the park, and you definitely didn't see Merida. Like there was nothing for her. Like nothing. Like,
yeah, that was a hard piece for me. Speaking of characters, though. Yeah. There's a lot more opportunities for character interactions at Disneyland.
Oh, absolutely. And I
think we touched on this in our last episode, but like, do it. Ask the cast members. If there's... Hop on that line.
Yeah. It's either they're just out and about and they're just like wandering around, like, which they'll come around the corner, you're like, holy cow, and they're just wandering with their handler, and they'll sit there and meet you, and
they'll stop for a minute and meet a couple of people, and then they'll move on. And we actually had that. My sister ran down the genie.
The genie, yep.
With Jude. Jude had on a shirt with the genie on it. He loves the genie, like it's one of his favorite characters, and so he ended up being able to have like a really cool interaction with him because he just walked by and we were like, what? Yeah. And I was like, go, follow him. Like, I kind of sent them to go. I'm like, he's gonna stop. Yeah. And if he doesn't, like, at least maybe he'll be able to see him a little bit better, because Jude didn't really get to see him when he walked by. And, so it was like, they had a great interaction. Right. Super fun. And,
Yeah, and I mean, back in Toontown, Goofy was just walking around. And
Goofy was so funny because he was smelling Brooklyn's
waffle ears.
Yeah, she had her Loungefly waffle ears on, and
so that made him hungry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's there were multiple times where characters were walking around, like Captain Jack was walking around, and Red was walking around.
Yes, Brooklyn got to meet Red. That was huge. She was so excited to meet Red.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones we saw just kind of moseying around. Mary Poppins, saw her.
I only saw her.
Yeah, we didn't get a picture with her, but we saw her walking around. Gosh, I'm trying to remember.
I know, especially in Disneyland versus like DCA, because we met so many Marvel characters in DCA that I'm like trying to go back and think like, well, who all did we see and meet in Disneyland? Oh, Brooklyn met Eeyore, and we saw Winnie the Pooh.
Oh yeah, yep.
Who else did we? Let me get through. I'm like literally scrolling my pictures to try to jog my memory because it was just there was so
many,
much.
Yeah, and it seemed like early in the morning, like they were definitely saw them out and about. Granted, as the crowds grew, it was harder to see them.
Right.
But that's when I saw Jack and Red out wandering around. So characters are out. You just have to keep your eyes open.
You kind of have to pay attention. And I do think there's a thing there where if you are a character person, you are going to ride fewer rides.
Yeah.
If you are a ride person, you're going to miss characters because
Absolutely.
Whereas you have these very strategic places to go and stand in line to meet so many of them at Disney World, you don't have those same strategic places at Disneyland. Some of them have general areas where they tend to show up more.
Right.
But, like, we never saw Donald.
Right. No, we never did see Donald.
I was very sad.
Yeah.
I saw Donald in the parade. That was it. Like,
right.
I did not see him again. And we didn't see Rapunzel. She kind of stays in this one little corner of Fantasyland, and that's it.
Yeah.
She only meets at certain times after the show there. So, it's like, there's only a couple of opportunities to meet her. It was a lot. Like, you kind of have to choose. Are you going to go and try and meet characters?
Yeah.
Is that going to be your goal for the day? Or are you going to try to do rides? Is that your goal for the day?
Right.
And then you get what you get with characters.
Right, because some of those characters that were kind of staying in one spot and had a line, their lines got long fast, especially in Disneyland. Like, Tiana's line was outrageous.
Oh, yeah. And you can meet the new Little Mermaid there.
Yes. That was also a long line.
And obviously, it just came out. That's a new thing.
Right.
Totally understand.
I get it.
We thought about trying to stand in it, and every time it was just so long.
Right. It was gonna eat up a good chunk of the day, and we were busy kind of going around and riding rides and eating snacks and kind of comparing some of them to Disney World and Disneyland.
Yeah. The other ones, the ones that do have some dedicated spaces to meet at, there is a place to meet some of the princesses. You can meet Mickey and Minnie in Toontown.
Right.
You can meet Tinkerbell and Pixie Hollow. And Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore pretty much have Pooh has a dedicated spot back in Critter Corner.
Wasn't Ariel's in a dedicated spot?
And then Ariel has a dedicated spot. The new Ariel does. Yeah. Has a dedicated spot in it's towards, like, you're walking towards It's a Small World.
Yeah. Yep. It is. So
she was kind of like right in the sun. I honestly felt horrible for her the way she needed shade.
Warm. Yeah. So you mentioned Small World, which somehow you guys got me on It's a Small World because not my favorite ride. But that was one.
I think it's one of those like OG ride things though that you're like, we're here, we gotta do it.
Right. So we rode of rides that they also have at Disney World in Magic Kingdom. So Small World, Haunted Mansion, Big Thunder, Pirates, Space Mountain. Did I say Haunted Mansion?
You did.
Okay.
You also have Buzz Lightyear ride. But yeah, and Teacups. Yeah.
Yeah.
Teacups was great. I like this Teacups better, I think.
Yeah, this Teacups was good. Yeah.
You like Space Mountain better.
Yeah, it's like I said, I wasn't like worried about getting off and like, am I going to be able to like move?
I have not done It's a Small World Disney World in so long that I can't compare the two.
It's tough.
But can we pause for 1 second and talk
Yeah.
about things not to do at any park?
Okay.
Especially a ride at Disneyland that is like an almost OG, almost an original ride
Okay.
at the park. Parents, do not allow your children to use their bubble wands that they may have purchased on the ride. There was a little girl sitting in front of us who was using her bubble wand through a big chunk of the ride, and no parent interaction of like telling her to stop, nothing. The only time she got told to stop was right before we got out, and there happened to be a cast member right there who told her to turn it off. I love bubbles. I love the bubble wands. I will thank little kids for giving us bubbles, like, you know,
Right.
middle of the day, and like, because I want them. There's a lot of adults who will be like, oh, don't, you know,
Yeah.
like, gosh, I can't believe kids are doing bubbles again. Like, I'm all about the bubbles. I don't mind. Not on a ride.
Yeah, I didn't even notice.
Not on a ride. Well, but I was sitting right behind her.
Oh.
Not on a ride. Not during a meal or where
Yeah.
there's food. And not if it's like even an outdoor line, if it's
Yeah.
like packed in.
Yeah.
Like you do that in the open walkways and
Yeah.
like where they can blow around, and but you don't do that, and you don't, like, it was even just the lights on it, even when
Okay.
it wasn't always running. It's distracting.
Yeah. I think I was just trying to stay awake.
Yeah, you guys were pretty tired. You
Yeah,
were pretty
I
done.
was. It was dark, so I was probably nodding off, and probably
Yeah.
for the best because
Or-
not
or-
my favorite ride.
No, the kids were pretty scarred by.
Yeah, from Kingdom
Kingdom
Keepers. From Kingdom Keepers.
Okay, so
So-
other OG rides. Back to our OG rides thing.
Or comparable,
Comparable rides.
right?
What about Haunted Mansion and Pirates? Which would you say you prefer?
I still prefer Walt Disney World for both. I feel like Disneyland Pirates, it had several things that were different, but I almost felt like the gap between scenes was too long. And once again, I was tired. So I may have been dozing off a little bit, and then I'd wake up and it'd be a scene. But I had a harder time being like engaged in it as compared to Disney World.
I had a hard time being immersed in it.
Yeah.
Especially towards the first part of it. The first part is very long, and it's just a lot of like caves and
Right.
skeletons, and there's no storyline really.
Yeah.
There is, but like it's so much harder to see versus Worlds has a storyline from the get-go.
Right. And I feel like with Worlds, it's like once you get going, once you go down, like pretty much like once you go like around the corner and you start hearing stuff, like you're immersed in the story until it's over.
Right.
There's a lot of breaks in this
Yeah.
one where you weren't, like it was almost too choppy.
Yeah. I do agree with you on both. However, you aren't funneled into such a short line on Haunted the way
Yeah.
that you are at World. World, you step out of the
Stretching room.
stretching room and you're like immediately funneled down into
Right.
the single file. I mean, and it's hard. There's
Right.
times when we've like, you get separated and then you're trying to like catch back up with your group, and like
Yeah.
it feels chaotic.
Right.
I don't like the walkthrough portions of Haunted Mansion at Disneyland that are, those parts are a ride portion at World. But I did like the very last part where you're like actually entering the queue. Like
Yeah.
you're actually about to get on your doom buggy, like, and there were candles and there were like, I liked that part
Right.
a lot more. I wish that you had that and it felt a lot less chaotic
Yeah.
getting onto the ride.
This also kind of goes back to like the cast members on this like were good. Like they were friendly, they were
Oh
fine.
yeah.
but they weren't as into it. Mm-mm. It's like Brooklyn will always ask cast members, "What's your bat's name?" Mm-hmm. And every time this time, they're like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm still working on it." They weren't into it quite as much as it seems like they are at Disney World. I don't know if that's because at Disney World, a lot of them are college program kids, and so they're like, "I'm gonna be into it," or what it was. But they were fine. They were friendly. They kept everyone moving. Like,
yeah,
they did their job.
There wasn't an issue there,
right.
but it just like there wasn't quite the same amount of like spookiness when it came to like the cast members, where I feel like at World we've always had this kind of extra level, like if you work Haunted Mansion, you turn on the spooky, like so I don't know, I mean, it's always a fun, I tend to only ask them about their bat at the Halloween party. This tends to be when I ask them their bat's name. But
Brooklyn usually tends to do it whenever we first walk in, and whenever we go to get on the ride. Well,
it's hard. You really don't necessarily run into them that are wearing the headband with the bat on it. Other than that, so I would say I agree with you though. Those are two rides. Now I would say though, I liked Big Thunder Mountain better at Disneyland.
Yeah, there's definitely more to it, and there's part of it there because there was like we were going up the hill and there's the explosives and all that. That was rumored to be going in at Disney World. That was supposed to be part of the 50th. Like, it was supposed to be added for the 50th, and it was going to stay. It just never made it. It's one of those things that got cut.
I thought it did come in a little bit. There's still some of it. It's not the same, though, as it is at Land. No.
But, yeah, theirs is better. Like, I say theirs. Like, we actually have a home park. We're in Kansas City.
We kept saying it the whole time we were there. We kept referring to World as ours, and
it's their Big Thunder is definitely Disneyland's Big Thunder was more enjoyable. Like, and I really enjoy Disney World's Big Thunder as well.
And I preferred the queue too.
Yeah.
Even the Lightning Lane one of like it's all outside, which is fine, but you don't have quite the. We didn't run into the same amount of tight back and forth.
Right, yeah.
That you have at World.
And Disney, there's just no air moving in that sucker. It's hot. Yeah. I don't really remember the queue a whole lot at Disneyland, so.
There was something that we were doing or talking about that, like, I think that was one of the cues that I was having to turn the mom look on for some of the other teenagers in line.
So something else to compare with them is some snacks.
Yes.
But we ate a lot of churros.
I don't even want to add up how much we spent on churros. We ate a lot of churros.
Which at first, Brooklyn and I were disappointed because the first churro we got, I don't know if it's because it was early in the morning and it wasn't fresh. Like maybe it's like reheated from the night before. Like it wasn't particularly good. And then the rest of them we got were good. So churros, definitely go to Disneyland.
Yes.
And then corn dogs as well. Also go to Disneyland.
I was surprised. Now, that was at DCA.
That was at DCA, yes.
But there was a corn dog that looked very similar, though, at Land that I almost went and got one at before the parade.
It's really, really good.
I definitely had we had a good snack experience overall.
Right.
In both
Their
parks.
ice cream, though, is like frozen solid. Like
it's like on dry ice.
Yeah, I'm like, Florida, like, learn a lesson. I don't know why Florida, because there's a lot of times where we get the ice cream from Florida, and it's like, if you don't eat it, granted, it was much hotter, but still, if you're not eating that sucker within 30 seconds, it's running down your arm.
Yeah.
And here, they purposely tell you, hey, give it 2 to 5 minutes to thaw out before you start to eat it. So, yeah, that was definitely different. Same ice cream.
Yeah, same Mickey Premium bars and fruit bars.
It's frozen solid.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was definitely an interesting part of it. I did also notice one thing comparing to, I felt like there wasn't as much unique merch.
No.
We really kind of struggled I don't know if it's just the Disney World is so much bigger and you have so many other shops, and so you need to have more opportunities for merch. But I felt like I saw the same 10 things
we did
over. And I mean, you do see that too at World. I'm not saying that you don't, but there were just certain things where I was like, that's it?
Right.
Like, there's nothing else for this.
Yeah. Ran into that, I think, a lot. The selection of stuff was not as great, even in like World of Disney.
Well, World of Disney is like half the size, though.
Right,
too.
it is, but like I thought I was gonna leave that place without getting anything. I was like, "There's nothing there," and then I went around the corner and there's a Sword in the Stone shirt, which is like my first Disney movie, like that I wore out. Yeah, so that was pretty perfect for me, but. Yeah, the selection was not as good. I have one more due.
Yeah.
And this is a big one. And it goes with the fireworks at night, Wondrous Journey. Okay. One thing that we found out kind of the hard way is your sight lines to the castle. Yes, the castle is a teeny tiny castle.
She's a little old lady.
But the sight lines to her are not the same. There are a lot of trees in the way. Mm-hmm. So if you want a good unobstructed spot, you're going to have to get there early.
People were lining up 3 to 4 hours before the show.
Right.
Pretty much as soon as the 6:30 parade was over.
Yeah, people
were just stayed, like they would find a spot towards the parade, like where the parade route comes around the hub, and then they would just stay there and wait.
Right. Now, if you're just like, I just want to see the projections and maybe a little bit of the fireworks, they also do projections over on It's a Small World. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to see Baymax or the Blue Fairy at all. Like, that will not be part of your line of sight.
And one of the other things with line of sight, and that I noticed all around the parks in general, is California's had a lot of rain in the last 6 months. Mm-hmm. A lot more than normal. They have a lot of growth in landscape, trees and shrubbery and all of that. Understandably so, because of the way the weather has been. I'm not knocking that they've had that. However, it felt much more unkept.
Yeah.
And it was like...
There was definitely felt like there was some stuff that was overgrown.
There was stuff that was overgrown, and it's just one of those things where you go, okay, do those need to be cut back? Or does there need to be changes made to what line of sight is?
Yeah.
Like where you will stage people,
Right. And I don't know how to do that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we got there a good hour beforehand. And one, it was two of us trying to hold spots for 16 people.
That was a nightmare.
So being stressed out from that, and then people not able to get to us because they closed down.
They don't. So the hub circle, like the walkway area, like where the Main Street trolleys and stuff go, that doesn't get, like, you are not allowed to stand there and watch.
No.
And it remains open for people to walk, but you have to walk in one direction.
One direction, yep.
And so it is very difficult, and they are not kind about it.
No.
And so they will close that off, though, certain parts of it, and not let you, you can't cross.
Right. It's like our kids were trying to come first from Adventureland, which got closed down really early, and then tried to make their way over to Frontier and couldn't do it.
Yeah, trying to get around, even though we're used to it being crowded at World with that, you still had consistent paths that you could weave your way around. It felt like there was a missing
I was right up against the rope for the hub. Jackson could see us. He was pointing at us, and they still said, no, you can't cross here. So then...
And instead of telling them, here's what to do.
Right. Instead of saying, hey, you need to go all the way over there towards kind of Tomorrowland, get on the hub there and walk. You'll be able to get around that way. They didn't tell them. They told them either, you're going to have to wait here and meet your family after, or you're just out of luck, basically. And it took him trying to continue to work his way around to finally figure it out that he could do that.
Like, the amount of stress that cast members put on us and on our kids in that, it is the one time where it is one of the only times where I felt unsafe with cast members and the way that things were being run.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever said those words before.
Yeah, I don't know if
that was like, it was just this over feeling, like, they made me feel anxious, and I don't like
I think anxious is a better word than maybe unsafe. Like, I didn't necessarily feel unsafe, but I was anxious of, is our kids going to be able to get to us? And then frustrated.
But that's where the unsafe part comes from for me. Okay. Is it's like an anxiety thing of, like, are they safe?
Right.
Are they okay? I can't get to them. You can't get them to me. And yeah, it's stressful for the cast members too. There's no doubt about that. But there was just like, there was not a good way of communicating. This is what we talked about this in the other episode. Instead of it being, here's the what you should do. It was just constantly, here's what you can't do. Right. And it's like, okay.
A much easier thing would have been, hey guys, I'm sorry you can't cross here. If you work your way around over Tomorrowland and work your way over there, you'll be able to go over there and meet your family. Instead of just basically saying, no, sorry, you got to meet them after. And
I get it. They're big. They're not like little, they're not like 8 years old. But one of the cast members was telling me that they can be going around the park there at 7.
Wow.
And I was like, you've got to be kidding.
Yeah. I don't know. I just know that by the time that show went off, which was probably the number one thing I was looking forward to, because I wanted to see Baymax fly. Like, Baymax is my guy. And by the time that happened, I was so stressed out. And then I had the family in front of me that had a balloon, and they would bring it down, and then they would let it go, and it kept hitting me in the face. And like, the grandpa would grab, try and say sorry.
He was trying,
But he's also trying to watch the show and, like, has his grandkids there. Yeah. And, like, I get that. But between, like, the balloon and the stress of our kids and the rest of the family getting over there to us, because they were all with him.
Yeah.
Like, Jackson ended up leading, like, our whole group over there, which he was super stressed and ticked off about.
I was very proud of him for, he did a good job trying to handle it, but it was...
Right.
That was a very stressful situation.
But by the time that all finished, like, it sucked out any of the enjoyment I was going to get from the show.
Which, we tried to get you to go back Saturday night.
Yeah.
And watch it, but you didn't want to give up time doing the other stuff that we were doing. Mm-hmm. But it was rough. Right. It definitely did not have... There were moments of the show that were really good and I really liked, but...
It didn't hit the same because of the sight lines as well.
Yeah. I mean, and it wasn't just us. I mean, there's just not great...
No.
Like, you can see the fireworks.
Yeah.
And that was really pretty.
I could see the fireworks. I could see the projections on most of the castle. And I still got to see Baymax fly out, which was really cool. I really enjoyed it. But I think if I wouldn't have been, like, so stressed out, I probably would have enjoyed it more.
Yeah.
The non-movie music just wasn't hitting the same for me as, like, Happily Ever After.
Yeah.
Or for me, like, and I know this is going to take people off, even Enchantment.
Yeah, but I mean, Enchantment had... Yeah, I would take Enchantment over this.
I need to see it again.
I wish that we could have, like, a combo. Like, I need, like a merge.
Yeah, I need to see it again before I'll say that. Like, I don't want to make a judgment on it because I was pissed off at this point.
Yeah,
like,
it was.
I was pissed off. It's been a long day. It was stressful. Like,
but I mean, that's what I was. If you are wanting to see it, you need to plan that is something that you're going to see. And I do. I mean, we've said this about World too in certain things where it's like, hey, you're going to have to choose between these two things unless you're planning to be there for 2 weeks. Like,
right.
You're going to have to choose between some things if you are limited on time. You're definitely going to have to with this because everybody wants to see it, and space is just way more limited.
Yeah, it is.
You just don't have the same amount of size or walkways or
That's why
structure.
before I'll make any kind of judgment on Disneyland, I say I need to do it again. Probably not that close to a holiday or a grad season.
Oh my gosh.
So maybe that will help with the crowd some. Because mornings were fantastic. It just got super crowded.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
We need to wrap this up.
It's a long one.
It's a long one, but it's just
There's a lot of stuff.
how do you
Right.
break
It's a lot of
down
stuff.
all of the things that we did?
Yeah.
Because we did a lot.
Right.
Here are our top takeaways, right? Like rope drop Toontown if you've got littles.
Yep. Use Genie Plus.
Use Genie Plus and plan for those things like parades and fireworks and
Yeah.
characters. You got
Yeah.
to prioritize the things that you are wanting to do.
Right. Right. I think those are probably our top takeaways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a really good time though, and I'm
did.
really glad that we got to experience the place that Walt actually
Yeah.
got to stand.
Absolutely. There were multiple times where I caught myself during the day going, I wonder what Walt really thought about this. Or, well, I bet you he sat over there. Just different things throughout the day. It's that.
It was cool to be in the
Yeah.
in the same places that he stood and in the thing that he built originally. So,
Right.
we're gonna wrap this up, but hey, watch for more info and some of our tips and tricks. We're gonna be sharing a lot still on Twitter and Instagram at Salute to the Ears.
Yeah. And say with that, go out and find your joy.
And have a magical week.